From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We begin in Venezuela, where the progressive recovery of electricity continues in the country. The metro in the capital Caracas is up and running as service resumes. The announcement was made on Twitter as normal operations begin again. The Los Teques metro system is also working again, as well as the state railways. Work on restoring power throughout the country has been constant since U.S. attacks began on the Bolivarian Republic's electricity grid. Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro addressed the nation about the latest attack on the country's electrical system as power is progressively restored throughout the country.
The electrical sabotage was performed to deprive the country of electricity and water and to put people in a state of desperation and violence, a situation promoted by small violent groups.
President Maduro also said the national deployment of the Bolivarian armed forces, together with the people, will ensure the security of the electrical stations.
As General Padrino Lopez and the Almirante Ceballos has informed, the Bolivarian National Armed Force is deployed, guaranteeing the protection of the electrical stations, the water tributaries and substations of the country. At the same time, the Bolivarian National Armed Force is guaranteeing security and peace nationwide. If in the middle of this situation imperialists attempt to take action against us, our Bolivarian National Armed Force are willing to continue battling for our people in my command next to the people in civic military union that will guarantee the territorial, maritime, aerial and sovereignty of the country.
And regarding the 30-day plan to stabilize the electricity system, President Maduro announced the appointment of a new Minister of Electricity and President of the Electrical Corporation.
The electrical engineer Igor Gavidia assumes the Ministry of Electrical Power from today as a new minister in charge, and he also assumes the presidency of the Corporelec Corporation for the new stage of definitive defeat of the electrical war and the stabilization of the entire electrical system of the country. From today, the electrical engineer Igor Gavidia León takes over these new responsibilities with 25 years of experience in the sector.
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court of Justice has asked the National Constituent Assembly in Venezuela to revoke Juan Guaido's immunity. The president of the Supreme Court said this decision comes after Guaidó violated his travel ban in February. The court also ratified the decision to freeze his bank accounts and ban him from selling his properties. The decision will now be submitted to the president of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello. Now to Colombia, where the Senate heard the main objections by the government to the special jurisdiction for peace. Our correspondent, Tatiana Portela, was there.
We are at the Colombian Senate, where a public hearing has started on the objections presented by President Ivan Duque to the statutory law for the special jurisdiction for peace. Different figures have attended this hearing, among them legal analysts, but also human rights movements and groups of victims of the internal conflict, who are demanding that these objections are rejected. So there are two sides, those who defend the objections and those who say that they go against the Constitutional Court, which previously supported the law. The law is aimed at starting a process of reparation, truth, justice, and guarantees a non-repetition of crimes, a key point. We also have to say that this hearing has started with a high absence of senators who should be here analyzing the issue, a fundamental point of the peace agreement as it promotes truth and memory for the victims and for the country. We will remain here and keep you updated. On Wednesday, the Senate will decide if they accept or they reject the objections presented by Duque to the law.
That was Tatiana Portela from Colombia. And now to Uruguay. Its president has dismissed his defense minister and the head of the army over their action in a human rights case. Our correspondent Mateo Grille was there with the details.
After the daily minister cabinet meeting was finished, the Uruguayan President Tabaré Vázquez announced he was dismissing all the top military command from their positions, including the Defense Minister Jorge Menéndez, the Vice Minister Daniel Montiel, the Commander-in-Chief of the Army José González, and Chief of Staff Alfredo Ramón. This followed an investigation by the Uruguayan newspaper El Observador, which published the results of the so-called Honor Court, which evaluated the behavior of former military personnel but did not send the results to the judicial court. The behavior evaluated included the confession of the officer José Cavazzo, in which he recognized that he had thrown the body of the guerrilla Roberto Gomenzoro into a river after he was killed. The Honor Court hid that information, so the president decided to sack the top officials of the defense minister and the armed forces themselves. It is not yet known who will replace them.
That was Mateo Grillo from Montevideo. And Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has caused controversy after visiting the Western Wall in Jerusalem. The wall is located in occupied eastern Jerusalem, and in protest, Palestinians are considering recalling their ambassador in Brasilia. Despite previous statements from the Brazilian leader, Bolsonaro finally said the country won't move its embassy to Jerusalem. Rather, Brazil will open a trade and technology center there. The decision comes among internal struggles in Bolsonaro's cabinet on this issue. And during Bolsonaro's visit, Greenpeace activists unfurled a banner with the message, "Stop Amazon Destruction." The activists have urged the president to save the Amazon from the threat posed by farming and mining. The Chilean President Sebastián Piñera has signed trade agreements with his Indian counterpart, who is on a tour across South America. With these latest deals, both countries increase the number of products that are exempt from taxation. The two leaders have also signed cooperation agreements regarding geology and cultural exchange programs. Piñera has also reassured his support for India to join the UN Security Council as a permanent member. A bill to reform the system that manages pension funds in Chile is expected to be sent to Parliament. Social movements and unions have taken to the streets to reject the proposal.
People marched to the sound of trombones and songs to demonstrate against the current system that manages the pension funds. Neighbors are looking on from afar, while protesters continue to demand an end to the current system.
When it comes to social services and rights, women are always the most affected. The system that manages our pension funds is one of the best examples.
Retirement pensions in Chile are already extremely low for men, but women receive 20% less than men. This is a system that is supposed to reward individual effort, productivity, but instead condemns maternity and the elderly. That's why they're marching, to demand that the system of pension funds be managed under a universal system of pay-as-you-go. The government of Sebastián Piñera is nowhere to be found at the protests, but in lieu of the protests, it has announced a project to reform the pension fund system that is expected to be debated in Parliament in the upcoming days.
This project will not change the pension fund system and how it's managed. That's why we want to reject how this project is being debated in the Parliament. It should be workers who debate how to change the system towards one that promotes a universal management and that really protects workers.
We are hoping that the government responds to our demands instead of protecting insurance companies, banks, and big corporations that are pressuring for the current system to be maintained, and that only benefits 5% of the population.
A small percentage that runs the most important insurance, health, and education companies, where the money of pensioners and retirees go. The system to manage the pension funds was designed during the dictatorship by the brother of the current president, José Piñera.
The pension system in Chile is constitutionalized, unlike the systems that were established in other countries with different economic, social, and political models. The possibility to change the laws that are important and that benefit the people has become impossible. The votes needed to change the constitutional laws are impossible to reach. The problem here is how the constitution is written.
The current constitution was also implemented by the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet.
We have more stories coming up. We'll be back. Welcome back. 2 months after the presidential election in El Salvador, the elected president, Nayib Bukele, has now formed a team to be in charge of the transition of power scheduled for June.
The government of Salvador Sanchez Seren has chosen the government's transition team, and the ministers have started a presentation of their reports on the closing of their time in office.
I want to reaffirm the commitment I made since I took office. And one of the wise principles I've learned from people is that we must always find the common points and the opportunities to build together a country where we can progress with dignity, justice, and lasting peace.
2 months after being elected, Nayib Bukele has criticised the current government, accusing it of approving last-minute laws like the budget increase for municipalities. For that reason, he's unilaterally decided not to choose a transition team.
What we have said is that we will suspend any contact with the current government, and we will wait until everything is clarified. We disagree with the decisions made by the current government, and if at the end this transition act doesn't happen, we will do it with the people. We have no problem.
The continuity of social programs promoted by the left-wing government, such as agricultural packs, environmental sustainability, school uniforms and a daily glass of milk, are programs that must remain, say officials.
We haven't got the opportunity yet to report the upcoming government on everything that has been done, what we need to achieve yet, and the great challenges the education system has. We are ready, and the report is very well documented.
Now the social policies are in the hands of the upcoming government. The FMLN, now in opposition, as well as social movements, say they will remain vigilant for the achievements made, not to be overturned.
Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador insists that the causes of migration in Central America must be tackled. The statement comes in response to the threat by U.S. President Donald Trump to close the southern border if Mexico doesn't stop, quote, illegal migration.
Of course. We have to help because Central American migrants pass through our territory, and we have to bring order to that migration so that it's legal and at the same time for human rights to be protected. So that's where we're at, but let's stay calm.
Indigenous Maya communities in Guatemala are condemning the construction of a wastewater treatment plant in the Atitlan Lake. They believe that this project is an excuse to privatize and sell water for industrial purposes.
The Sutujil people, who are the ancestral heirs of the Atitlan Lake, located in the Solola department, reject the construction of a wastewater treatment plant, which would cost millions of dollars.
We, as a community, have raised our voices to say that water is sacred and it is not merchandise.
This joint public-private venture includes the installation of pipes at about 40 meters deep in the lake to collect water, purify it, and then sell it to be used for irrigating monoculture crops.
In theory, the plan is okay because it proposes cleaning up wastewater. However, in reality, the plan is an excuse to generate profits because what they are proposing is to sell the lake's water.
The budget for this venture is set at more than $215 million, and the communities would be forced to fund a percentage of this. They say this wouldn't solve the issue of pollution they face.
We know that our lake is being polluted, but where does all that pollution come from? It comes from all the businessmen who use fertilizers and plastics, things that we have never used.
According to the Sutujile people, a realistic proposal to clean the lake would be going back to their ancestral traditions.
We have asked people to go back to traditional agriculture. With techniques like permaculture, agroecology, biodynamic, we should start cleaning the lake using those strategies.
They have told us that the lake is dying, but that's a lie because the lake is alive and can clean itself.
Guatemala is currently on its electoral campaign period for general elections that will take place on the 16th of June. But most of the mayoral candidates have chosen to ignore discussions about pollution in the Atitlan Lake.
Santiago Botón, Telesur, San Pedro, La Laguna, Solola, Guatemala.
A well-known trans activist has been murdered in Peru. Claudia Vera was shot down in the streets of the capital Lima while she was with a group of friends. According to witnesses, Vera was arguing with a man when a woman threatened her and left. Minutes later, the same woman allegedly shot her 5 times. Several organizations have expressed concern over the killing and are demanding that the murderer be brought to justice. An acid attack survivor has participated in a pageant in the capital of Colombia to speak about violence against women. According to the Institute of Legal Medicine, there were about 900 cases of acid attacks in Colombia in the last 10 years. In this case, Patricia Espitia went through more than 40 surgeries after she got acid thrown on her face about 11 years ago. Now she has participated in a beauty contest to show strength and call for attention on the prevalence of acid attacks against women.
I see this as an opportunity to go out on the catwalk and be seen as a woman, and not just as the stereotypical woman that is tall, thin, skinny. We are not going to be constrained by the stereotypical beauty standards. We are breaking it all here. Why? Because we are diverse women. What you see on the runway is love, joy, enthusiasm, and attitude. I did a test for surgery, and that was when I realized what I was doing this. To prove to myself that when you are confident, have a love for God, and you have faith, then you know what life is beautiful and wonderful. Without this, there is nothing, because today I believe that my smile shows that this attack did not destroy me. When I see my photos from before and now, I can tell you that my smile shines brighter, with more intensity, because today I am happy.
And Ecuador has the opportunity to set a historic precedent for the LGBTI community. From Quito, Denise Herrera has the story.
The Constitutional Court of Ecuador has called a hearing to rule on same-sex marriage. The petition was submitted by an LGBTQ couple after the Ecuadorian Civil Registry Office did not recognize the marriage between persons of the same sex.
I have worked in a foundation for 18 years, and the day before yesterday, a 67-year-old gay person came in. He was alone and very afraid. That cannot continue in Ecuador. It's not that marriage will solve this, but it will help to prevent this from happening in the future.
The legal team of the LGBT couple say that if the court approves the legal consultation on same-sex marriage, all sexually diverse couples will be able to marry, and that will be a historic step in Ecuador.
It helps that the court has requested the legal consultation, and this is the most important court in Ecuador. We are sure that the court will recognize the marriage, which is already recognized in the Constitution. That right to marriage is recognized in Ecuador, and it needs to be put into effect.
Meanwhile, several organizations in favor and against equal civil marriage gather outside the Constitutional Court.
Ecuador has the opportunity to set a precedent. 20 years ago, it was illegal to be LGBTI. Now we have to register another advance for society. It is not only for the community, but for society as a whole.
Marriage can be a right for all citizens, and then will...
Or woman, a woman. Next, they will be in love with nature, a dolphin, a cat, or whatever. As they say, love is love, but each type of love must have its own laws.
LGBT groups say they are hoping the members of the court members will be more sensitive to their struggle and guarantee the recognition of LGBT rights on same-sex marriage. They pointed out that Ecuador is a country where the Constitution prohibits discrimination. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. The United Nations Human Rights Chief has urged Brunei not to apply the death penalty for adultery and gay sex. A proposed change in Brunei's law would authorize the death penalty for rape, sodomy, robbery, and for the defamation of the Prophet Muhammad, as well as more severe punishment for having an abortion and amputation for theft. The last execution under the death penalty in Brunei was back in 1957. However, the government has made an announcement to implement the penalty starting Wednesday.
The High Commissioner for Human Rights is stressing that religion and human rights are not opposing forces. In fact, many of the fundamental tenets of both are exactly the same. We are calling on the government of Brunei to halt bringing into effect this law and instead to launch a consultation with religious leaders, with government leaders, civil society, and people from various communities to try to come up with legislation that can fight crime, but at the same time uphold the human rights of all the people of Brunei.
Insecurity remains in the north of the Democratic Republic of Congo, especially in the municipality of Kivu and in the capital of the province, Goma.
He ran into bandits armed with machetes and spikes. They attacked him and killed him.
He was the acting president.
He was coming from a funeral. Why did he get killed? I mean, they are trying to kill the whole family.
There are Hutu Congolese families expelled from Lubero, landless farmers who have to rent rooms or live with host families.
We are the victims of the people they killed in Lubero. Before he got killed, he said at the funeral that he would keep defending his cause.
They camped outside the headquarters of the provincial government to demand their rights. They want to know if this is going to stop or if it will continue.
There were over 20 people killed in Goma last month. It was worse during the war, but insecurity is still blocking the future. People are crying out for peace. Civil society and social movements are urging the government to guarantee the dignity of the police and soldiers.
There are places where 3 police officers have just 1 weapon. Many of them are just working as guards.
After 7 in the evening, you can't even walk the streets. You're scared, even of the police and the army. We ask the government to give the police what they need to do their job.
As a sign of the changes going on, the demonstration gets through the barrier and delivers its message to the governor. They want training and decent pay for the security forces.
People continue dying.
You don't look at the mouth of someone who's crying.
The governor promises to pass on their message. He says that everyone should participate in building peace and justice. A new dynamic is needed at all levels, local, national, regional, and international. The people want to play their part and take responsibility in the face of the great challenges of building peace.
Residents of Giheta and Ruseke villages in Rwanda are still working to heal their wounds 25 years after the genocide, and the water stream that separates them has become a key tool in this process. The neighboring villages are going to peacefully share the stream they used before the genocide. But the horror of the mass killing continues to haunt them. 800,000 people, mostly Tutsis, were killed in 100 days. Children were the first to gather together at the water, followed by adults, even though the painful memories persist.
For someone to admit to the crimes he committed only to the authorities without returning to ask for forgiveness from his victims, do you think that is enough? It's far from enough.
Asking for forgiveness was not easy at all. The first time we crossed to ask for forgiveness, there were around 100 of us. Amongst us, people were scared.
The Algerian president is set to step down by April 28th before his mandate expires, according to state media. Abdelaziz Bouteflika said before resigning that he will ensure continuity of the state's institutions. On Sunday, he announced that a new cabinet of 27 ministers would run the country until a new president is elected, including well-known political figures and newcomers. And citizens in Algeria have said the new government is far from satisfying their demands, as they believe the new government is not different from the previous one. Weeks of protests have been ongoing in the country, calling on the president to step down.
We want them to go. Leave us. We do not need you, either to judge or to put in place a new government. Why is it their choice? They live and leave their children. What does it mean? That the system is always the same.
British MPs have voted against the 4 possible alternative plans for Brexit. This comes after they also rejected Prime Minister Theresa May's deal with the EU for 3 times. None of the 4 proposals, including a customs union and a Norway-style arrangement, gain a majority. The EU has called for an emergency summit for April 10th. And that brings us to the end of this news brief, but you can read more by going to our website, telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, you can find us on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria, and you can join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.